Okay. Now talking of the third block that you have is a Black Spring, and it is written by uh, Henry Miller. So in this entire novel, Miller recounts his childhood in the 14th ward in Brooklyn. Right. So this is a recollection of happenings in the childhood, and so this happens in the 14th ward in Brooklyn. This was the only world he knew, a fantastic and insular place where he played in the streets and lived freely. The boys in the streets were the real heroes of his world. Other memories include the large battleships in the Nayard, a man named Rob Ramsay who went to the war and killed himself the weekend playing, and perambulations, the tides and the weather of the river that are in his blood, and the sight of Brooklyn Bridge against the sky. Child and youth were times embellished by fragmentation and splitting, and change, but adulthood is actually different. He remembers the moment when he discovered uh, Dostoevsky's and nothing was ever the same. Then comes a chapter known as a Saturday afternoon. Miller in his Paris, Miller in Paris and feels Miller is in Paris and he feels more at home than he did in America. He loves riding his bike around the city and meeting people. He feels part of the weave of the city's fabric and is grateful for the way Paris seems to anticipate his needs. Specifically, there is a wonderful urinal in public, and he reminisces on the other perfect places for urinals in the city. A very, weird, what say, um, a kind of uh, weird thing though. A person had got fascinated by seeing the urinals in the city, and he was thinking of what else could be, the fascination that he could find in different public places of the city, in the urinals, of course. Miller's thoughts also turn to Robinson Crusoe as detailing a life before fragmentation and modernity. Now, men can never be happy. They are always taken by something like cancer or syphilis or pressure of life. Writers like Rabelais and Apuleius and the contributors to the King James Bible, along with Jonathan Swift, are the ones with the salty tang, the zest of life, the real cruelty, and real boredom. Then comes third or fourth day of spring. So these are the seasons that are different parts of the day that are described in the novel in the form of chapters. Miller is in Paris now, but in stream. So this novel follows a pattern, and that is known as the stream of consciousness. Now, you need to know there are other, writers who have contributed a lot to the stream of consciousness, like Virginia Woolf. So Miller is now in Paris, but in stream of consciousness, it's like a wave, something in it feels as if something is happening in real. The dream is so real, the thoughts are so real, anything from your past life that has already happened seems to be so real. So this entire thing is a stream of consciousness pattern that has been followed. He thinks of his childhood home, syphilis, the fact that the world is neither good nor bad, that there is no such thing as past, present, or future, then that his story was only one of many. He feels mad and wants to go out to America. The angel is my watermark. In this section, Miller explains the process by which he created a masterpiece of painting. One day, he visited a few art museums and returned home and pulled out his typewriter. He describes what is the source of inspiration, um, behind creating that masterpiece. He felt inspiration flooding him. The force of some external dictation overwhelmed him, and he wrote page after page after page. He took a break for food and drink, but even that seemed to be fueling his creative force. Finally, he paused and ate again. This time it felt like his own body, like eating. He felt as if, he was being consumed by his thoughts. At this point, he realized that what he really wanted to do was to paint something. He looked at a book of paintings by inmates of an insane asylum and admired how they painted so much. At first, he thought of simply copying one of them, but that seemed like the worst form of plagiarism. What is plagiarism? Copying somebody else's work is plagiarism. He decides to begin with a horse. Each body part seemed impossible to do perfectly, and he became vexed at how hard it was to capture this quintessential image of art history. He chronicled the other additions, the erasures, and the stops, and the starts, and the triumphs, and the vexations, a man tickling the horse, the bridge. He's looking over a mountain that then becomes a volcano, a cemetery, and an angel. So these are the elements that he painted. And then he added color and a randomly gondola. Finally, he washed the painting, scrubbed it, and laid it out flat. This was the finished product, and he claims the angel in his watermark. So this is the reason why the first chapter was. I mean, this chapter was named as the angel in watermark. The tailor shop. In this section, Miller reflects on his years as a young man in Brooklyn, particularly focusing on his father, whom he called the old man, and the tailor shop of where the man worked. His father loved drinking and eating and would leave often for a break. He had many friends in the neighborhood, but over the years, almost all of them passed away. One of them found Jesus. One of them became famous by pretending to be crown prince, but was truly quite depressed below his cheerful demeanor. And Miller seduced the wife of another after the man died. So this was the kind of reciprocation that he had with his friends. The old man had many customers, and Miller felt bad for the people like him who had to work with an obnoxious rich people. But overall his father was frustrated with him and his behavior. His mother was also annoyed with him, his mother also annoyed him with her complaining. Miller was married in his early 20s and found his wife to be annoying like his parents, but he was pleased that they had tremendously, good physical intimacy after she had one of her angry fits of sobbing. The extended Miller family often got together, whether it was for holidays or any other time they felt the need to gather. His uncle George and Tante Milia both suffered from the bouts of craziness due to their poor spouses, though Milia gradually descended more and more into insanity and eventually had to be committed. Generally, Miller ruminates on how he suffered at the time, how he once felt like there were good things in store, but now he did not feel anything as such because slowly he was becoming hopeless with the happenings in life. Then comes the chapter Jabberhole Kronstadt. Miller and a friend pays visit to this eccentric but friendly man and his wife, daughter, and three servants. Things are charmingly strange in the house, and Jab, as he is known, speaks volubly about numerous things such as poetry and real estate. Then comes the chapter Into the Night. Miller recounts dreamy, surreal vignettes that are not linked together in any meaningful way. They are perplexing and mesmerizing scene of the city and nature, sex and death, meaningless in peace. Walking up and down in China is the next chapter. In this section, Miller decides France, that is in Paris, is China because it is a foreign land. He details his perambulations, his encounters with a dead man on the street, his ruminations on the fragmentation of identity, what plagues the world, and his own life in Brooklyn. He concludes by grimly saying that that another war is on the horizon, and the boys he knew from home will have their brains blown out. Then comes the chapter Burlesque. Miller links us. Okay. Emily, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. As per your syllabus, I was walking. I guess there were a few participants. I was walking you through um, the novel wherein the what is there, I guess, in what block of your uh, it's in block 5. Okay, so it was the novel that I'm discussing today is Black Spring, and initially I'll be telling you about the summary, then I'll go through the character list, and then I'll be talking about the themes that are there. So, talking of the summary, I'm going to give you a chapter wise summary, in fact. The first chapter is the 14th ward, and in this chapter, Miller recounts his childhood in the 14th ward in Brooklyn. So, this is basically a recollection of what happened in the childhood. And this was the only world he knew, a fantastic and insular place where he played in the streets and lived freely. The boys in the streets were the real heroes of his world. Other memories include the large battleship in the yard, a man named Robin Ramsay, who went into the war and killed himself, the weekend playing, and perambulations, the tides and weather of the river that are in his blood, and the sight of Brooklyn Bridge against the sky. Childhood and youth were times embellished by fragmentation and splitting and change, but adulthood is different. He remembers that moment when he discovered Dostoevsky, and nothing was like ever the same. Then comes chapter two, which is basically not exactly chapter two, but part two of this, a memoir or the recollection of the stories that he has written of his childhood. The second chapter says a Saturday afternoon, Miller is in Paris and feels more at home than he did in America. He loves riding his bike around the city and meeting people. He feels part of the weave of the city's fabric. He feels as if he belongs strongly to the city and he is part of that city. He is able to relate with everything that is happening by it and is grateful for the way Paris seems to anticipate his needs. It seems as if Paris was identifying his needs and everything was at his goal. Specifically, there is a wonderful urinal in public, and he reminisces on the other like perfect places for urinals in the city. A very weird fascination, though. Miller's thoughts also turn on to Robinson Crusoe. So this is a novel that I need to read. A character from a very famous novel, and the name of that character is Robinson Crusoe, as detailing a life before fragmentation and modernity. Now men can never be happy. They are always taken by something like cancer or syphilis. He has some bad experiences with him, for which he feels that things can never be okay, and people they die due to some or the other reason. They are always dead. So it's because of cancer or maybe syphilis or the pressure of life. Writers like Rabelais and Appius and the commentators of King James Bible, along with Jonathan Swift, are the ones with the salty tang, the zest of life, the real cruelty, and the real boredom. He feels that these writers have depicted life with these essence, and it is really apt. Then comes the chapter, third or fourth day of spring. Miller isn't now like he's in Paris, but in a stream of consciousness. What is stream of consciousness? A dream or a happening from the past is again happening in your dream, and that feels very real, as if it's happening again with you. You are like a part of the entire process, and you are feeling it. So there are other writers even who have worked a lot on stream of consciousness. You can take the example of Virginia Woolf, the novelist To the Lighthouse. So Miller is in Paris now, but he is in a stream of consciousness. He thinks of his childhood home, syphilis, the fact that the world is neither good nor bad, that there is no such thing as past, present, or future, that his story was only one of many. He was nothing exceptional on this planet. His story was one of the many, people have stories, and he was even one of the many. He feels mad and wants to get out of America. The next chapter is The Angel is My Watermark. Now, in this section, Miller is explaining the process by which he created his masterpiece. And it was not in terms of writing, but in terms of painting. So one day he visited a few art museums and returned home and pulled out his typewriter. He was truly inspired by, happenings in that art museum, and he thought that he could write something about it. He felt inspiration flooding him. The force of some external dictation overwhelmed him, and he wrote page after page after page. He took a break for food and drink, but that was even going on at that point of time. Even he was constantly thinking as to what is to be written next, and that engagement was even giving him a very fueling his creative force. Finally, he paused. He ate again, and this time it felt like his own body eating. He was feeling as if he was getting consumed by his thoughts. At this point, he realized that what he really wanted to do was to paint something, not to write something. He looked at a book of paintings by an inmates of an insane asylum and admired how they painted so much. At first, he thought of simply copying one of them, but again, in his mind, he had the idea that this would be the worst form of plagiarism. So, plagiarism is copying somebody else's work without permission. He decided to begin with a horse. Each body part seemed impossible to do, to be drawn perfectly, and he became vexed at how hard it was to capture this quintessential image of art history. He chronicled the other additions, the erasures, and the stops and starts, the triumphs and vexations, a man tickling the horse, the bridges looking over. So these are the elements that he had drawn in his picture. Until then, victims of volcano, a cemetery, and an angel. Then he added color and randomly a gondola. Finally, he washed the painting, he scrubbed it, and he laid it out on the flat. And this was the finished product. And he claimed that he claimed that the angel was there in his watermark. Then comes the chapter, The Tailor Shop. In this section, Miller reflects on his years as a young man in Brooklyn, particularly focusing on his father, whom he called the old man, and the tailor shop is the place where he worked. I mean, not Miller, but his father. His father loved drinking and eating and would leave work often for a break. He had many friends in the neighborhood, but almost over the years, all of them had passed away. One of them found Jesus. One of them became famous for pretending to be the crown prince, but was truly, quite depressed below his cheerful demeanor. And Miller seduced the wife of another man after he had died. So the old man had many customers, and Miller felt bad for the people like him who had to work obnoxiously, rich, terribly rich, but they had to work for them. They were not considered to be a part of the company. Obviously, it feels bad. It bothers Miller constantly throughout. But overall, his father was frustrated with his behavior, and the wife of Miller even annoyed him with her complaints, constant complaints. Miller was married in his early 20s and found his own wife to be annoying like his parents, but he was pleased that they had a good physical intimacy session after she had one of her, angry fits of sobbing, crying, wailing, and they had a good physical intimacy session after that. That was the only thing that he enjoyed in his marriage. The extended Miller family often got together, whether it was for holidays or any other time they felt the need to gather. His uncle George and Tante Emilia both suffered from bouts of craziness due to their poor spouses. The marriages, they had not failed, but the spouses were not as enjoyable as they thought it would be in life. Though Emilia gradually descended more and more into insanity and eventually had to be committed. Generally, Miller reflects on how he suffered at the time, how he once felt that there were good things in store, but he did not know. He was kind of hopeless about the situation that existed in his life. Then comes another character, and people call him Jabug. And the name of the character is Jabul, Jabul Kronstadt. Miller and a friend take a visit to this eccentric but friendly man with wife, daughter, and three servants. Things are charmingly strange in the house, and Jab, as he is known, speaks frequently, about numerous things like poetry and real estate. So he was quite an impressive man who lived with his family, and Miller pays a visit to his place, and he talks of this man. Then comes the nightlife. Miller recounts dreamy serial vignettes that are not linked together in any meaningful way. They are perplexing and mesmerizing scenes of the city and nature, neatness, and peace. Waking up waking up and now in China. That's the next chapter. In this section, Miller decides France, which is in Paris, is China because it is a foreign land. So whatever it might be, it doesn't make a difference. He decides like any foreign land to be like China. He details in his perambulations with the dead man on the street, his ruminations on the fragmentation of identity, what plagues the world and his own life in between. What is put him to a stop? He ends by grimly saying that another war is on the horizon, and all the boys leave from home will have their brains blown out. Then comes the chapter burlesque. Miller links a series of crazy acts to make it true, going into a hole in the wall church service and seeing a dead body, a burlesque show. So he's seen getting into a hole in the church. Hello,
Yes, ma'am.
and seeing dead. Yes, am I audible? I guess I lost network for some time.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and seeing a dead body, like it's a burlesque show that is happening, an adulterous wife of a friend, and sitting in front of childhood home. He says America is great if one can be, just be a man and ask for what he wants. Until and unless you demand what you want, you're not going to get in America, and that one can find solace in one's own internal book. So you don't go and find solace somewhere else in America. If you want to have peace in your life, you have to look for it in your own self. And until and unless you ask for something, you demand something, you're not going to get it. And the last chapter says, megalopolitan maniac. Miller paints a vivid picture of the noisy, vibrant, nature-defying, crowded city and its denizens. Denizens are a modified term for citizens. He indicates that humanity has achieved much, including the ability to kill millions at the push of a button. It's like he's talking of the nuclear weapons that the countries have. I mean, the human race has invented, and they have become so capable. They have achieved so much that they have the ability to kill each other with the push of a button. There seems to be an end at hand, and he wants to simply sit and meditate on his own essence. So basically, towards the last, he is not bothered to with what is happening around who is what. He says you can find your peace, you can find a settlement with your own self towards the walk that you have in life, which leads you to find peace in your own self. Okay. Now coming to the characters, the first character that I'm going to talk of right now is the narrator himself, who is none other than Miller. So essentially, Miller himself is talking of. He is chronicling, or he is putting his experiences in, in an ascending order. that he has experienced in New York and Paris. He is voluble, creative, colorful, individualistic, and darkly funny. Obviously, he has taken up satire in many forms, not mimicking any other one, but the situation that you face in and around. He is a acute observer, but not a disinterested one, often weaving that he sees into his own experiences and memories. He is often misogynistic and racist, obsessed with sex, and possessive of a cruel, arrogant streak. He has problems with his father and his home country, which is why he moved to Paris. Then comes like character that is Tante Maria. Tante Maria is Miller's aunt. She became more and more mentally disturbed after her husband left her and then died. Miller, at the behest of the whole family, took her to the insane asylum where she was admitted. He saw her as half crazy and half a saint. He never said that she was completely crazy and felt that perhaps she was too pure for the cruel world. So there was no insanity that he received from her. He felt that she was too pure soul to survive in this cruel world. Then the character that Miller describes on is the Bendix brothers. So Albert and Bendix are W. Albert and Bendix. There are three brothers in a neighborhood in Brooklyn who frequent the Miller family, tailor shop. They are frequent visitors to Miller's home. They despise each other to such a degree that no one ever refers to the other in the presence of other people. So they are so dead against each other. They are so against each other that they do not present addressing each other or addressing the names of each other in presence of others. HW is described as the grumpy one, while Albert is the more irritable. Bendix has never actually been seen because both his legs were amputated, so he never actually comes to talk. Everybody knows that he was the third brother, but no one has actually seen him because of the amputation of his legs. He was imprisoned, he was returned to the home. But these two brothers are more disgusting because of their activities. Then comes Moffat, overly aloof, disdainful, and a mustard coed. Moffat is the old man's old Kennedy. So he turns out to be an enemy of this old man, old Miller's father. He owns a bar that the old man frequents and comes to the tailor shop often but never pays the bill. He goes and racks up, erect meals at the bar. He thinks that he should be kind of claiming for the peace that this man has created in his tailor shop. So he goes and avails for free food and free drinks at his bar. And the two carry this on for many years. This has been going for many years. There is no stop to it. Okay. Then comes Rob Ramsey, the chauvinistic thug and the black sheep of the family. He was a full good for nothing before the war, but became a soldier with medals after the war. He is intent on living life as a drunken spree until committing suicide by taking a long walk on a short drive one night. So this man basically, was a good for nothing, and then he becomes something after the war. He is awarded with medals. He's recognized. He's felicitated, but still that doesn't suffice him. He is regarded as a drinking drunk. I mean, drunk spree of man who is a drunkard basically, and he commits suicide and he walks in a bucket. Then comes Miller's father, the old man, the owner of a tailor shop. Miller's father is excessively fond of drink and is somewhat, uh, he's a drunkard. Miller envies and dislikes him a lot of time, but sympathizes with the burdens of the man in question. At one point of time, he deeply sympathizes, but he empathizes and he recognizes that this man has a lot on his head to handle. The old man is very social and has pottery of interests, friends, though most of them die before the as discussed above. Many of his friends are dead. One of them found Jesus. The other one was died, and the other man's wife was his wife. Then the mother, basically, she's the main character who annoys Miller now and again. Miller describes his mother as being wounded to whining and complaining. Like he says, she makes him being at home tedious for him. Then comes George Sardani, a charming man who works at the hotel. And what does he does for a living? He opens doors for visitors. He eventually becomes religious, but Miller likes him a great deal. Then comes Julian Legre. Julian Legre is a matinee idol and friend of the old man's. Like Miller admires his remarkable voice. He hails from Manhattan, so this character is from Manhattan, and Miller is of his voice. Then comes Cors Payton, another matinee star who is afraid of the old man. He hails from Brooklyn. Then you have Paul Dexter. Paul Dexter is a friendly and likable man from Indiana who has never quite had the enough money but always has big dreams. Grant is the life of every middle class once in the society. He is well liked by all, but he's hard to please. Miller tries assiduously to cultivate his favor, but he fails. He's cheerful but prone to serious bouts of depression and often disappears for days at a time. When he returns, he is contrite and speaks volubly of all manner of the subject. Though essentially a failure, the people in the neighborhood find him endearing. He dies of a heart failure in a foot of water at the show. Then comes the Baron Corolla. So the Baron Corolla is a man who made a bit of money in Hollywood acting like the Crown Prince. He moved to Brooklyn and was esteemed by the old man for being a baron, though he created that name for himself. He liked the cronies in front of the tailor shop, but privately told Miller he was unhappy and needed money. He eventually contracted, syphilis and dies. Come on, this is one of the part of recountings that Miller had in his childhood because people were taken away either by malady or pressure of life or syphilis. Now comes Miller's wife, who I've mentioned to be a very annoying character. She had, her problems. She had her own set of problems, and some of the problems were shared, as a husband wife, on the basis of the fact that the physical intimacy sessions that they had, that was very good. So Miller depicts her as a delicate woman prone to crying fits to garner sympathy and to be brutish and vain. Patsy O'Dowd. Patsy O'Dowd is one of the three Irish bartenders at one of the bars the old man likes to visit. He is an explosive man who insults his customers, but they esteem him and actually crave for the insults. Then comes Ferd Pate, a neighborhood man and close friend of the old man. He is friendly and large, but often seems indolent and sleepy. He shuffles along very slowly in the streets, but has a kind smile for the people. Then comes Uncle George, one of Miller's relatives. The morgue man. He is missing an arm and often haunts the morgue to get clothes from the dead. His wife apparently slept with her brother and neglected George, and that is why he has become away. Then comes Jeb. He is an eccentric man whom Miller visits one evening. He has numerous interests, vibrant and voluble. He speaks of real estate and poetry in his holidays and all of that. Then comes Zilla Bay. So Zilla Bay is Miller's companion when he visits the lab. The three characters, Katya, Anna, and Elsa, they are three foreign women who work for the lab in jail. Chap considers them relatively useless. Then comes Widow Kitty. Jab is his younger daughter. She asks numerous existential questions of her father before going to bed. Then comes Jill. Jill is Jab's long-suffering, solitary wife. Jab insists that she is pregnant. It is an indication from every encounter that they have that she is pregnant. Then the Woodruffs. They are a married couple who have a contentious relationship. He wants more physical intimacy, she wants more money. The transaction is very clear. They eventually make this transaction, and he looks late and cruelly punishes her when he finds out that she is sleeping with other men as well. So this becomes a matter of jealousy. Now coming to the themes. Just give me a minute. So recounting the themes in this book, the first one is Palladium. In many of the sections of Black Spring, Miller or his narrative alter ego perambulates to discuss stories of life in Paris. He stands on bridges, joins crowds, steals into salons and shows, and draws vivid pictures of the city dwellers. He walks, his walks make him contemplate his own existence, question his own existence, and compliment his own existence. And the fragmented nature of such walks is mirrored in his self. Though talking about a photographer, Susan, description is apt. It's like reconnoitering, stalking, cruising the urban inferno, the voyeuristic stroller who discovers the city as a landscape of voluptuous extremes, adept of the joys of the watching, connoisseur of empathy. The flaneur finds, the world picturesque. He finds as if the world is painted, and there are many things that he gains by his short walks, and that help him join his fragments or the pieces that he has in himself to find himself as a whole. Then comes America. What is the American theme that is followed here? Miller grew up in New York and admired his Brooklyn childhood neighborhood, but he eventually fled to Paris. His exile was on account of feeling America's modernity too stifling, too fragmenting, and too bleak. He saw America as a black curse upon the world, and was spreading disaster. So America was a place where he felt limited in his freedom of expression and his ability to adventure and seek out something deeper. His depression and anxiety were acute, and he did not believe that there was anything in store for him anymore. In Paris, though, he has such a sense of being at home that it seems incredible that I was that he was born in America. Here he has breathing room to contemplate his self and how to make up for that. Minus, he always felt like himself. There is another theme which runs throughout the novel. I told you about stream of consciousness, so it's dream versus reality. Miller deliberately fuses dream and reality in many sections to show what a fine membrane separates the two. He moves seamlessly from the anecdotal to the dreamlike, causing the reader to abandon any serious hopes for ascertaining exactly which is which. So it's like a very thin film is separating reality and dream. I have already talked about the dream of consciousness. So that is what Miller is talking about in his dream versus reality theme. So Miller's chronicling of his dreams and his work with psychoanalysis led him to understand that dreams reveal our unconscious to us, and that if we study them diligently, we may discover the things that impede our ability to achieve an unified self. We have to get hold of the fragments of dreams and things that happen in reality in order to find a unified self or self in a whole. So Miller has to work through his anxieties, his family traumas, his sticky relationship with America, his despair over finding meaning for himself, and dream allows him to face his fears. Then comes another a tug of war that is played. I'm so sorry, Mamali. Actually, I've got a very bad fever. I had a bad cough. Okay, uh, we'll continue.
Okay,
In the
ma'am.
modern, thank you. In the modern world, with his the signs and spectacles that he faces, um, it emphasizes on the present, its blith capacity to render mass death, and its disillusioning chaos and carnesses. The unified and content itself is not easy to achieve. Miller saw childhood as it's as if an idyllic time of wholeness. But as an adult, he's fragmented. He's left into pieces with all the burdens that he has to face. So his story, seeping into other stories at his present, past, and future, threatening to pull him apart. He was like basically kind of indecisive and hopeless as to be like what is to be done next. As William Solomon writes, it is as if Miller's wish is to avoid modern life such as much as possible and go back in time to the stages before the traumas of birth. Autobiography, thus conceived, appears as a regressive process of a return to the womb to a condition of biological dependency in which the organism is absolutely free of any. Writing is how Miller comes to terms with and defines his identity, his art, in the bulwark against insane and inhuman world that he, inhabits in or he stays. The war. This theme is not as blatant as others, but Miller clearly alludes to the First World War and the Second World War, showing how a corrupted and diseased society seemingly could not avoid killing millions of people due to its hubris and insanity. The sites of a war, permeate Miller's childhood as the battleships in the Basine, returning soldier Rob Robinson, who is eventually kills himself because he could not uh, readjust to a civilian life later. Later, as an adult, Miller reflects on how society perceives it as a mark of civilization, that it can bring about mass death with mere push of a button. He imagines the friends of his youth who will now be going off to fight in the Second World War and will have their So sorry again for this brief break. My voice is actually not so he imagined the friends of his youth who will now be going off to fight in the Second World War and will have their heads blown off or to their guts, like, completely destroyed. Another theme which runs throughout the novel is childhood versus adulthood. This is primarily one of the major themes, in fact. Childhood, as Miller depicts it, one of is like it is one of peace, security, community, and unity of self. The 14th ward may be dirty and run down, but as a boy, it provides everything Miller needs. He and his childhood friends seem to experience a timeless existence in which there are few divisions between pleasure, like pain and sorrow. As William Solomon writes, Miller was securely ensconced in this informal world of festive excess, safe in his sheltered, self enclosed environment. When his family moved out of the neighborhood, he viewed it as a force of exile, and combined with the changes brought about by puberty and young adulthood, he began to experience emotional disarray. So there was a disproportion in his feelings and a progressive loss of psychic wholeness. Miller writes that when he was a child, we were whole, but now there is a splitting. It's adulthood is basically splitting. It is fragmented. We do not have pieces of ourselves, of us in our own selves. Then comes memory and nostalgia. Miller spends so basically this entire piece is nostalgic because Miller keeps on brooding over his childhood as to what had happened earlier and what is happening in the present. So Miller spends a considerable amount of time in Black Spring engaged in conjuring up memories for his youth and early adulthood in New York City. Though there are troublesome elements in this world, which refers to World War One, a slowing economy, social and racial tensions. Miller was unhappy for much of his early years of life. Even in the most temptatious years, when he disliked his parents, experienced the trauma to have to institutionalize his aunt or leave her in the asylum, and wondered what his life all meant. He exhibited a fondness for the people and places and sensations of home. So memory is the one which draws his attention, and he's fond of places which reminds him of home, that is Brooklyn. Memory is both sustaining and destructive. It can help us keep things alive, but it can also remind us of what came before and our need to move forward. Nevertheless, memory is inextricable from childhood. We live in the minds, in ideas and fragments. We no longer drink in the wild outer music of the streets. We remember only. So throughout the novel, there is one thing which acts as a major literary device, that is memory, dreams, nostalgia. So this is basically the theme that runs throughout the novel. So Miller has to learn to set memory aside when it does not when it does not serve to his art or selfhood. Okay, Mamali, I've taught you what is the summary, I have taught you who are the characters, and I've talked about what are the themes that are invariably imbibed in this novel. So do you have any questions that you want to ask? Very good
No,
evening.
ma'am.
Are you sure?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you want to note down a few questions, reflective questions regarding this?
No, ma'am.
Okay, just give me a minute, please. Okay, Mamali, is there anything that you want to ask, like any questions? Do you have any doubts regarding this? Do you want me to explain certain things?